When I believe your eyes of 10 million fireflies lit up the world as I fell asleep. 'Cause they fill the open air, leave teardrops everywhere. You think me rude, but I would just stand and stare. I'd like to make myself believe that planet Earth turns slowly.
It's unlikely that we know anybody in our lives that hasn't got some form of scar on their body, whether that's acne, stretch marks, surgical scars. Scars are sort of everywhere on everybody. But I've been thinking a lot about scars recently, and I wanted to take a journey to see whether the scars that people had on them were viewed negatively or positively, depending on what had happened, and how these affects people in different ways.
I had to begin with myself and my own lived experiences.
I have several scars on my body. None of them are big, but all of them bother me quite badly.
It's hard to say that I'd rather stay awake.
It's still really sore actually, and quite sensitive because it's so fresh, but this was having a tumour removed a couple of months ago now, and for a while we didn't really know what the tumour was, but it turns out that it's completely fine and something they call a pregnancy tumour, which just means basically like a blood vessel that doesn't stop.
This was a frightening period because recently my brother had been diagnosed with skin cancer, and it was something that ran in our family. I was relieved that this tumour was just benign. However, the mark it has left has made me think about scars because, just like tattoos, they are permanent and become a part of your identity. I asked my brother if I could come and visit him and talk about what it was like going through his diagnosis and, thankfully, his recovery.
So it was a couple of years ago. There must have been 26, 27. And I had a mole on my head which was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I think it was when my niece mentioned it. She said, "Uncle Luke, what's that thing on your head?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't really know, to be honest," because I had it grown on my head. And I investigated some Facebook photos, and you can literally scroll back through time and see it getting smaller, but relatively quickly. Just thought, well, that's probably a bit weird. So it was probably Becky that made me go and have it checked out. I think I missed the first 2 appointments, but I saw a couple of skin specialists, and they decided to remove it. So yeah, that's how I got the scar initially. Sometimes I look at it and just see how it's getting on, but in general, it's not something I'm overly aware of. I don't like it. It's not something I look at and go, "Oh, I really love that scar." If there was a choice that it wasn't there, then I'd say great. It makes me slightly uncomfortable, not in myself, but uncomfortable because I know I've got to tell them I had cancer, and that might make them and then uncomfortable because I've had where you go out on a night out and you're in the lad's toilet, it's like, "How'd you get that scar?" And you just don't really want to say, "Oh, I had skin cancer." Because not because I'm embarrassed about it, but I know how embarrassed I would feel if I said that to someone, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Well, I've got the one where they took the skin.
Oh yeah, I've not even seen that one.
Which is a bit more messy.
That is a bit more like mine.
Yeah, because it stretched a bit. Obviously, I went straight back to work with the stitches in, and I must have pulled in. It pulled away.
It's actually a bit.
It's quite thick scar tissue, and it does itch sometimes.
Mine's really itchy too, actually.
But I've been told to just rub it as often as I can to try and break the scar tissue down. No, they had to take a skin graft because they took a biopsy first, and I would have had a straight scar had it not been cancerous.
Right.
But then, because it was cancerous, as a safety procedure, they take more.
So they had quite a lot removed.
Because I'd already had the skin stretched closed, they can't do it again, but they take another circle. So they then had skin graft from my neck. Yeah, and I have had one removed from my ass cheek, but that was nothing.
When you first started taking the bandages off and going out, did you feel self-conscious then?
I think initially I did. I thought it was I was glad it had been done because it's that or the worst consequence. So it is a lesser of two evils, and I was definitely glad to have it, but you do think people are going to look at you and stare at you. You do feel like that, but I think as time's gone on, I've just realised that generally people don't.
I can imagine that.
I'm not going to tell you I like having it, but it doesn't come into my mind on a daily basis.
We spoke some more, and it was clear that me and my brother have just small scars that haven't really impacted upon our lives to any real negative degree. But it got me thinking about what it would be like to have had scars all of your life. Or what if those scars were so much bigger than the ones that I'd had? I contacted a woman named Emma, who had spent the first 12 years of her life in and out of hospital, undergoing operations due to a bone condition. And she has lived with these scars ever since.
Bed, and you, bed. Get in. Good puppies. About the same. I was desperate for money, and there was a job in the paper for a nude model, for a painter.
Yeah.
And I applied. And I went there and we chatted and we had a great chat. And he said, I would love to use you. He said, I think you're great.
Yeah.
But your legs are so misshapen, if I drew you, people would think I'd gone wrong. When people used to ask me, what's happened to you? I would say, I used to be a tree. I started growing branches. I mean, of all the idiot things, you know, well, no shark attack or, you know, falling out of a tree. It was, I used to be a tree. I probably found it amusing, but I was probably hurt inside that, you know, I can't even do a job, you know, because I don't look right. But, you know, and it was so commonplace anyway. Like I said last time, you know, I used to have girls following me every time I went out, saying, whoa, what are you doing going out? You know, I wouldn't walk around like that in a skirt with legs like yours. Oh. So it has been a theme. Aside from the scars, I mean, you feel inadequate. It's just well, it's like being stabbed through the not the chest, because the chest is up, through the solar plexus.
Yeah.
You've always got this, what do people think of me? You know, I'm, you know, why don't they like me? Rather than being name called, you know, it's easier to be brush, you know, and get in there first.
Yeah.
But inside, I was in a constant state of panic. It was like, who's gonna, you know, where's the next attack gonna come from? And I think that probably left me, I normalised into panic. I was in a plaster cast for, you know, 9 months at a time, so I couldn't turn over. It was a full cast from my chest to my foot to down there. You know, at that time, I had to take charge of myself because the nurses quite often would turn me and pull the drain out or something. Well, I was 50 this year, but I still like to think that I'm a girl. Every now and again, weather permitting, I'd like to wear a skirt, because that's what girls do. But after a lifetime of hiding my legs and wearing jeans, it's actually, you know, really uncomfortable wearing a skirt. I feel so self-conscious and quite chilly, to be fair, because skirts are different from trousers. But yeah, doing that transition, and I try and make myself do it every summer. And the ones on my arms I'm used to, you see, but the ones on my legs, I suppose I'm not, which is really odd. So yeah, if I go out in a skirt, I actually do become all over again, as a 50-year-old grandma, become self-conscious. To me, people are people. I had a guy come in the shop a while ago, big, bright scar, red scar right across his face, and I was captivated. And I was like, see, what an amazing scar. You know, how do you get it? What's your story? You know, I've got that empathy, I've got that understanding. And it's not until actually, you know, somebody starts asking you questions that you start thinking, oh, gosh, yeah, actually, it's integral in every, you know, insidiously in every part of my body and life. Scars, yeah, scars are physical, the ones that show, but they're not the ones that do the damage. It is the emotional scars, the underlayers that people don't see.
Emma's story really affected me. It was hard to think of the shame that she was put through just because of the way she looked, and I couldn't imagine people would still be so cruel in this age of calling out body shamers. But a young boy contacted me regarding this documentary, and he wanted to share his story.
I'd been watching TV in my room when suddenly I fell backwards off my cabin bed and snapped my elbow. I had to have an operation and they put metal pins in to join the bone back together. I then had to have my arm put in a cast for about 6 weeks, and I missed my first day at primary school, which really annoyed me. The operation left me with a scar that I really don't like. It's itchy and hurts all the time. I don't like the look of it because, as you can see, it stands out as a big pink lump. Kids at school make comments saying it looks disgusting and weird. This really annoys me. We saw a different consultant in November last year, and because of the pain I'm getting around the scar area, he has suggested an operation to look at the scar and see if there is any nerve damage, and also to try and neaten the scar. They told me there is a risk it could make my elbow and scar worse, but there is also a chance it can improve it. I decided I want to give it a try, and now I'm waiting for my operation, which is at the end of May. I'm feeling nervous about the operation, also excited, because it could sort out my scar and make it better.
I wanted to look at the effect that scars have on people's bodies, and importantly, how they view themselves. And I wanted to really look at whether it depended on how that scar got there and what the story was behind it, into how that made them feel, and whether they could ever view scars as a positive thing.
After speaking to Emma and Ralphie, I met someone who, although had had negative experiences, felt that his scar represented something more important. Sean used to be in the Navy, but due to a complicated illness, he had to leave. He met with me to explain what happened and why his scar isn't necessarily a negative thing in his mind.
I kept feeling this pain, and we just decided it was an ingrowing hair and left it for about 9 months. And it turned out to be a little tumour. So when I went to have that removed, it was only meant to be a little pea size, and it's not particularly huge now, but yeah, I had that removed at Derriford. From the blood tests from that, showed that I was ill.
Yeah.
And everything kind of snowballed from there with my illness. So it's still a weird one for me, because I don't really see it that much because it's on my back, but when I do notice it, it's a stark reminder of what was a very rough few years like. If I'd left it as an ingrowing hair, if I hadn't been putting that firefighting equipment on and off my back, and if it wasn't bothering me, I could have left it longer. My illness would have got worse, because within 12 months of that, I was ill.
Yes.
And they'd already started investigating it at that point. If that had been left much longer, it could have been a different story, definitely.
Okay.
It's a weird one, because it's on my back. Like I say, I don't see it every day, and I don't think about it. But it might even be something daft, like you itch your back and you can feel where it is.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know, you catch it in the mirror or whatever. And it's not particularly big, but it does remind... That was like the starting point of it all, because there was nothing wrong before that.
Yeah.
But I'm also grateful for it, because if I'd have left that longer, things could have been significantly worse.
Yeah.
And I've been made very aware of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit of a double-edged knife, that one.
From your point of view, the scar isn't something that's like you wish it wasn't there, or you could like get rid of it, or it bothers you.
No.
But it represents something that is like the beginning of like a
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
more
I mean,
intense
like
journey.
I say, that small benign tumour saved my life.
Yeah. Sean's scar is the same sort of story as mine, but it holds a deeper meaning to him because he feels grateful for it after a long battle with ill health and understanding how that could have been different. I found more and more people who were willing to tell me about their scars and the stories behind them, but did not feel comfortable sharing them with the world, and this is the crux of the matter for me. Scars are everywhere, and as individual as the person who carries them. Scars represent battles that you've been through, and they represent things that you've overcome. And if your body is able to heal, then surely that is something that we should be proud of, and not necessarily something that we need to hide away or feel embarrassed about.
I feel like such an insomniac. Why do I tire of counting sheep when I'm far too tired to fall asleep? It's 10 million fireflies and wiggles, I hate goodbyes. I got misty eyes as they said farewell. I know where several are if my dreams get real bizarre, 'cause I keep a few, I keep them in a jar. I I'd like to make myself believe